Hi everyone, it's Liam here from Rating the Races. So I've had a look at the Grand National and I have come up with my 4 for the race that I will be backing now. On the basis that I'm hoping that they go off a bit shorter anyway. I think there's a couple of standouts and I think there's been some plans for some of these. Starting off, I think the standout one straight off, it is the favourite. Intense Raffles. Very lightly raced, as you can see. Only had the 6 runs under rules in Ireland. Having come over from France, had some really good form in France. Came over to Ireland, won a novice chase at Fairyhouse, then won again another novice chase before going on to win the Irish National. I mean, it looks it looks an obvious one. Won an Irish National, beat Any Second Now, who even last year was still in really good form. Beat Minella Cocooner, beat Frontal Assault. Would have won by a bit further if they'd left their effort a little bit later. Was only a 6-year-old, now a 7-year-old, so can get in the Grand National. It looks really obvious in terms of what's the negatives about this horse. This horse could well be a Grade 1 horse that is running in handicaps, and they've kept him carefully campaigned this year to make sure he gets in the Grand National off around the mark that they were hoping. After winning that race, you can see that they dropped him to hurdles. He had a couple of runs over hurdles. You ignore both of those; they're just hurdle runs. They're both fitness runs. They're both keeping him primed. And he then ran a great race at Fairyhouse in the Bobby Joe Chase, when chasing home Nick Rocket. Now, Nick Rocket runs in this race, in the Grand National, and will be carrying 111 stone 8 off a mark of 163. Intense Raffles was giving that horse £3 and gets to run in the Grand National off 151, only got beat by 3/4 of a length over a trip that possibly is even too short. I mean, now Intense Raffles looks incredibly well handicapped. If we're taking that Nick Rocket form literally, I do, to be honest. I think that was a very good effort. Beat Nick Rocket, who had come into the race in good form, having won. What did he win? Was it the Thaistes or the yes, it was the Thaistes. He'd come into the race winning the Thaistes, which we'd backed him for. Yeah, I mean, there's no negatives about that. Capodanno was 3rd, Minella Cocooner 4th, French Dynamite 5th. It was a really good race. Intense Raffles will appreciate further, as he's shown when winning the Irish National, as long as he jumps around, which I'm sure he'll be fine at. Yeah, he could just be very, very nicely handicapped for a graded horse. It could be that he is actually a future graded horse, getting to run off handicap marks in terms of like a handicapper's current rating. The graded horses are all right at the top of the handicap, carrying 11-12, 11-9, 11-8 sort of thing, whereas he might be a graded horse that gets in relatively lightly because of very good campaigning, to be honest. What can you get about him? You can get 15-2 non-runner no bet at William Hill. I mean, he's going to run, but he's the biggest price there anyway. He's 15-2. The negative about that horse is the ground. Is he going to get it soft enough? But even if he doesn't get it soft enough, it's over 4 mile too. Surely that'll just bring in his stamina, and yeah, I think he'll be absolutely fine with that. He is the one. He is the one to beat, in my opinion. Second horse that I want to talk about actually comes from a race, that same race, and it is. Just waiting for my computer to catch up. It is Minella Cocooner. I think Minella Cocooner is overpriced here. Finished 3rd in the Irish National last year, beaten by Any Second Now and Intense Raffles. Now, we know Any Second Now had come down to a really nice handicap mark, and we know Intense Raffles was evidently very well handicapped. Intense Raffles went up 11 for that. Any Second Now was, as I said, running off a really low handicap mark. Minella Cocooner was running off a mark of 148. Now, he's got to carry 157 in the UK, so he is up 9. Intense Raffles is up 11. There probably isn't going to be a lot between them. And we know that This horse definitely stays the trip. Minella Cocooner has also won a Bet365 Gold Cup in the UK. And at the beginning of this season, he looked like he was being campaigned with a handicap in mind, because he ran in the John Durkan at 66-1. He was never going to win that. It was over 2 miles 3. And he's not a graded horse, is he? He's not top class, going to be beating the likes of Factifile and Galopin des Champs, etc. Talking of Galopin des Champs, he then went to Leopardstown for the Savills Chase. He went off 66-1. He was never going to win that. Then went to Leopardstown again for the Irish Gold Cup. Wasn't going to win that. Went off 100-1. And then last time out, eventually dropped into a race that he was expected to run a bit better. He finished 4th, beaten by Nick Rocket, Intense Raffles and Capodanno. When he was getting £3 from Intense Raffles and was officially wrong at the weights. Now, there wasn't a lot between them, and he looked like he needed further. Out of all of them, he looked like the race was run against him. Intense Raffles got to dictate from the front and tried to quicken away. Minella Cocooner clearly looked like he needed further. The extra trip will definitely suit Minella Cocooner, and I don't think there's going to be a lot between them. Now, on that basis, the fact that I don't think there's going to be a lot between them, if we have a look at their current prices, we can see Intense Raffles down here at 15-2. Minella Cocooner's down here at 25s. I think he's been very carefully campaigned for this race. He has dropped a little bit in the handicap. We know he can win handicaps when he actually takes them in, and long distance handicaps. He's got a 3rd to his name in an Irish National. He's won a Bet365 Gold Cup. He just loves stamina races, stamina sapping races, and the 4 mile 2 at the Grand National will really suit him. He's very interesting, and the positive about him is when he won the Bet365 Gold Cup at Sandown, it was on good ground, so he's possibly a bit more versatile than Intense Raffles with the going in mind. When he won that Bet365 Gold Cup, back in 3rd that day was Nick Rocket. Now, he was beating Nick Rocket, who was running off a mark that day of 147. Nick Rocket is now going to be running off 163, so he's up 16. Minella Cocooner is up 6 on those two bits of form, and yet Nick Rocket is here at 16s. Minella Cocooner is here at 25s. I don't see any reason why Minella Cocooner can't beat Nick Rocket again, and I would probably have them the other way round, to be honest, in terms of the market, or at least significantly closer. I think Minella Cocooner should be shorter than 25s. I like him. He's that type of horse that's going to be there or thereabouts at the finish, I feel. That is Minella Cocooner. The 3rd horse, now interestingly, the first one is trained by Thomas Gibney. The next 3 are all trained by Willie Mullins. The 3rd horse that I want to talk about is Grangeclare West. Now, this horse could be interesting on the basis that if the trip suits, which I think it will, he could be nicely handicapped here. So he would have to run off a mark of 163, carrying 11 stone 8. But I just wonder whether they think he's a Grand National horse and they've got him laid out for the Grand National. Why do I think that? Well, we can see that he's run over 2.5 a lot. He did run once over 3 mile here at Leopardstown in a chase. He beat Corbett's Cross that day, and he beat Corbett's Cross by 6 lengths. Now, if Corbett's Cross had been in the Grand National, unfortunately he's sadly lost his life in the Gold Cup. If Corbett's Cross was in the Grand National, I would have been really keen on Corbett's Cross. Back in 3rd that day was Flooring Porter, a dual Grade 1 winning hurdler, and a very good chaser. Grangeclare West comfortably beat both of those when he got the trip up to 3 mile. He's been twice since over 3 mile. On his return, he ran it over 2.5. He's never going to be quick enough for that. He then went to the Savills Chase, where he ran a good race for 6th. Wasn't that far behind. I know the way you're thinking. Now, if they had both run in the Grand National, I know the way you're thinking would have been a short price favourite. And then 2 runs ago, actually split Galopin des Champs and Factifile in the Irish Gold Cup. Back in fourth that day was I Know the Way You're Thinking. I think we're underestimating how good Grangeclare West is. Not that, people are suggesting that he's fluked those positions. I think he just wants a trip. And he's one that could be very interesting if they decide to run him in the Grand National. He looks like one of those horses that, if we keep running him in the Grade 1s, we're going to find something that beats him. I Know the Way You're Thinking, Galopin de Champ, Factifile, those type of horses will beat him in the Grade 1s. However, in the Grand National, he could be the one that comes out on top against all of those other graded horses that are kind of, we don't really think we can win Gold Cups with them, so we might as well run in the Grand National. Grangeclare West is right down here at 25s. I think that's a big price. And at non-runner no bet, if he doesn't take his chance, no harm done. We'll get our money back. Yeah, I'm quite keen on him. Ignore his last time out run. He dropped in trip to 2.5 at the beginning of March. I feel that was just a fitness run. I really do. I feel that was a fitness run with the Grand National in mind. And finally, the last horse that I want to talk about for the Grand National is another one of Willie Mullins's. Meeting of the Waters. Now, Meeting of the Waters is also interesting for me because I know the supposed talk about the JP horses are that, he might even be fourth choice JP horse. I don't believe that. Iroko may well be their number one, and they've planned to get him here. But the concern with Iroko is he definitely going to stay that trip? Is the trip all perfect for him? We don't know. He's only ever been up to 3 mile 1. Granted, that was behind I Know the Way You're Thinking, but he's got to prove that he definitely stays. I Am Maximus has won this race, obviously, but is now higher in the weights. He's got to run off a 167 compared to his 159 last year, and maybe he was taking on those graded horses that were just a bit long in the tooth. If you have a look, he beat the 11-year-old Delta Work, the 11-year-old Minella Indo, the 10-year-old Galvin. This year, some of those graded or Grade 1 rivals are a little bit younger. Intense Raffles is 7, Iroko is 7, Hewick is the old boy at 10, Nick Rocket, if he runs, is 8, Grangeclare West is 9. So I just wonder whether I Am Maximus may get beat by a horse that's going to be a future Grade 1 winner, or going to be, going to be around for a few years, whereas some of those, as I've just mentioned, like Galvin, he's retired now. The horse who previously chased him home in a Grand National was third, wasn't he? I think Delta Work has Delta Work passed away. He's definitely not running in it this year. Yeah, he died, unfortunately. So the runner-ups died. The fourth was retired. Minella Indo doesn't look anywhere near the horse he was. Yeah, I think this, maybe he just beat the old timers last year. One horse who got beat in that race was Meeting of the Waters. Now, Meeting of the Waters finished 7th as a 7-year-old. He ran a really good race for a 7-year-old, went through the race really nicely and was bang there for a long way. That came off the back of running at Cheltenham in a very competitive Ultima handicap chase and a slog handicap chase, because it was on heavy going that day. That might have left its mark and might have just cost him late on. This year, slightly different. This year, as you can see, they started off in a 3-mile handicap chase where he went off 20s, considering he'd gone off just 6s for the race at Cheltenham. And then 6s at Cheltenham, and then ran a really good race in the Gold Cup, in the Grand National. He then went off 20s on his return because they were not trying in that race at Leopardstown. They then dropped him to hurdles for a handicap hurdle, trying to take advantage of his ridiculously low handicap mark of the hurdles, but that didn't work. It didn't really matter for JP because they still won the race with Percival Legola. And then they returned to Leopardstown for a 2-mile 5 handicap chase. Now, I believe that he was not in that race to win it. He was in there just to get a bit more, another fitness run, and to not have a hard race like he did last year. Last year he came into it, as I said, off the back of a 3rd in an Ultima on heavy going. This year he comes into the Grand National off the back of an 8th on yielding going over 2 mile 5. It's not going to have left as much of a mark as the Cheltenham race did. And with that in mind, considering he only went off 11s last year for the Grand National, he's a little bit older, so I think he'll stay a bit further. He hasn't had a hard race. The 25s about him at the moment is massive. I think he could be... It would not surprise me if one of the JPs towards the head of the market drifted alarmingly and Meeting of the Waters was the one they all jumped on. I think Meeting of the Waters could go off single figures here. I really do. I think they could go, actually, that's the one we've planned and plotted and it's worked out perfectly. I think of the JPs, the weakest one for me would be I Am Maximus, because he beat old timers in the Grand National. One has died, one's retired, the third looks all over the place, the fifth hasn't been seen since getting injured. It might have just been that he beat the graded horses that weren't good enough to win graded races, but there could be a couple coming into it this year that are still good enough to win graded races. So they are my 4 for the Gold Cup, for the Grand National. Intense Raffles is the one to beat. Could actually be a grade 1 horse getting to run off what I'm referring to as a handicapper's mark, right down off 10-10 rather than being right at the top. Second one is Grangeclare. Minella Cocooner, at 25s. That form with Intense Raffles looks good. Has also won a Bet365 Gold Cup. So we know he definitely does stay these sort of trips. And yeah, I feel that Willie Mullins has done a good job with getting him to the Grand National, not looking like he's done a lot this year. The third horse, Grangeclare West, needs a trip. Could be very interesting if he does run in a Grand National, because I think he's still good enough to be running in Grade 1s over 3 mile, 3.5 mile. If there was a 3.5 mile Grade 1, I think he would be in it, and he would be I think it'd be a short price, to be honest. And finally, Meeting of the Waters, who they've slightly changed the prep this year. They're coming here off just a £1 higher mark, and his effort at Cheltenham has kind of been ignored. And this year he's had a lot easier campaign compared to last year. You can see that he went from winning a race at Leopardstown, winning a race at Cork, then unseating at Leopardstown, finishing 3rd at Cheltenham. That's a hard campaign to then end up at Aintree. This year, one run over fences where they weren't trying, a hurdle race where they tried to take advantage of a ridiculously handicap mark, and then dropped him in trip on yielding going for, I'm pretty confident, for the Grand National.